Penn State's climb in the On3 industry recruiting rankings continued through the weekend, welcoming one new 2024 commitment, four-star offensive lineman Caleb Brewer. The Nittany Lions now stand at number 11 in the updated rankings. So let's bring on Blue and White Illustrated publisher Sean Fitz. Penn State was at 19 in the team rankings just about 2 weeks ago, but over the past couple weeks, they've been on a tear. Another big recruiting weekend this past weekend, so let's take a look at it. Trench monsters on campus. Benedict Uma, Nigel Smith, and Liam Andrews all on campus up at Penn State this weekend. So let's start at the top, Sean, with Benedict Uma, 6'5", 240 out of Avon, Connecticut. Now, he's a really good prospect, number 51 overall, number 8 at his position. He's been to Penn State a couple times. Can the Nittany Lions close here?
It's an interesting recruitment because he is from Canada originally. He's prepping in Connecticut. He hasn't been many places. He's been to Stanford. He came down to Penn State this weekend. He's got a Duke official visit set. This is a huge visit for Penn State because it's really your first introduction to big-time college football. He hasn't been to the games. He hasn't been to the whiteout of Penn State. He hasn't been to Ohio State. He hasn't been down south or anything like that. So to get him on campus to make a first impression, that's going to be something that sticks. He's going to be back for an official visit this summer. So I think it's just a huge first impression. They've got some connections at that school, and they can't let those defensive linemen in the Northeast get away. To get him on campus, I can't understate the importance of that. He's very high in the On3 rankings, and for good reason.
On a weekend where they had a bunch of top targets on campus, maybe none more important than he was. Moving on to Nigel Smith. He goes 6'4", 260 out of Melissa, Texas. Now, Penn State has a little bit more competition for him. He's got OU, A&M, Ohio State, Texas all coming after him. Where does Penn State stand in all of this?
Well, this is an open recruitment because he's been so many places. So you mentioned he's been to all those schools that you mentioned. He's actually been to Penn State a couple of times. When you think about a Texas kid footing his bill to get to Penn State a couple different times, that speaks to some legitimate interest. He's got an official visit set up for the Nittany Lions this summer. So I think Penn State can get into that. I have, it's just a tough time or a tough way to think that Penn State's going to out recruit Texas, Oklahoma, some of those big schools in that region for a Texas defensive lineman. But Penn State's made a really big impression on Nigel Smith. He's, fallen in with that crowd in terms of the Penn State commits that are currently on board. Feels like he fits at Penn State. Going to be a tough one, obviously. They're going to have to get him back on campus at least one more time, maybe a couple more times. But Penn State has made a really good impression and dug out that relationship there in a really good way.
All right, Penn State fans, before I ask Sean his thoughts on the number one interior offensive lineman in America, do me a favor, like this video and subscribe to the On3 YouTube page. I'd appreciate it. All right, on to Liam Andrews, the number one interior offensive lineman, number 78 player overall, out of Massachusetts. He's been to Boston College, he's been to Oklahoma and Penn State, probably the most. What does James Franklin need to do to lock him down?
Well, it's an interesting recruitment because Andrews, although he's the top interior offensive lineman in the country, Penn State likes him as an offensive tackle. He's got the length to do so. He's got the size to do so. But also, he's a heck of a defensive lineman, and I think he prefers it to play on that side of the ball. So This is an interesting recruitment in the sense that if he wants to play on the defensive line, he's going to have to find a school that wants to let him play on the defensive line. Penn State recently switched recruiting him as an offensive lineman out and out to recruiting him as an athlete, essentially, a jumbo athlete. Penn State seemed to be fading in this one, so to get him back on campus after he went down south, or Penn State hopes they move the needle in the sense that this is another one of those Northeast guys, another one of those New England guys that, they can't let get away. There's been some guys, Samson Okunlola got to Miami last year. There's just been guys in that region that have gotten away, big-time guys, and if Penn State wants to establish themselves as a national championship contender, you have to essentially keep these guys home. I mean, obviously Boston College is up there, Syracuse, you've got a bunch of schools up there, but Penn State has been the dominant force in the Northeast for some time now. They have to keep those guys sort of home and continue to establish that pipeline to New England.
All three of those big men were on campus over the weekend, but we can't talk Penn State trench monsters without talking about the number one overall player in the country, edge Dylan Stewart. Now, he wasn't there this past weekend, but he has made 3 trips to Penn State this year. Do you believe the Nittany Lions are amongst the top teams in his recruitment?
I would say probably top 5 to 7 in this one. It's tough. I mean, he seems like he's got his eyes south. Georgia's obviously been big in this one. Ohio State has also been big in that one. I know they're not
Alabama.
south, but they're a team that is recruited. Yeah, Alabama, South Carolina's got an official visit. Sterling Lucas has done a really good job down there. So Penn State feels like they're in that next tier that's fighting to get one of those other 2 official visits. Penn State's got its work cut out for him. I don't think personally that he lands at Penn State, but at the same time, they made him think. They made him at least consider, lining up one of those official visits. And really, given where Penn State stood coming into that visit, it's pretty much all you can ask if you're the Nittany Lions.
Yeah, and I think he's going to take that recruitment, maybe the distance. So getting him in on that official visit will be the next key step in his recruitment. Now let's move on and talk about another key position, quarterback. Penn State doesn't have one committed. We're about mid-April right now. Who is Penn State's top QB target?
Well, those dominoes, they're falling right now. They had Luke Kromenhoek on campus last weekend for Easter for an extended period of time. He's been on campus a couple of times. He was, he's a Florida State commit. I would consider him Penn State's top quarterback target, but he seems to have been solidified with Florida State since that trip. So all eyes kind of switched to Michael Van Buren out of Baltimore, St. Francis. He's been linked with Oregon. I believe he's at Oregon this weekend. Oklahoma, who also just got a quarterback commit. Penn State, Maryland, certainly in there. He's been up a few times, was just back on campus a couple of weeks ago. That's really where the logic points in this one. Penn State offered him as a freshman after his debut on national TV, where he just kind of lit the world up, and he wasn't even a starter at that point. So they've stuck with him. And I think it's a good fit. Really talented kid. Obviously, the draw, the knock on him is his size, not quite 6 foot. So he's one of those shorter quarterbacks, which we're finding a lot of short quarterbacks in this class of 2024. But Van Buren, very, very talented prospect, throws the ball well. And I think that if you're looking for a logical fit for Penn State, he makes sense as their quarterback in the class of 2024.
You think that could happen maybe before the start of summer or before the start of his senior year?
Van Buren has a decision date set for July 8th. So the way the quarterback dominoes are dropping, you just wonder if he's going to make it that far. So I don't think he's going to get into the season uncommitted. And, he wants to announce on whatever date he has circled the July 8th date. So it makes sense. Maybe it happens before that because of the dominoes. As I mentioned, Oklahoma got a commit. Oregon may be in line to get a commit here soon. So it's just one of those things where the position sort of carries out how this thing works as opposed to him waiting out. I think Penn State will wait him out until July if he wants. And that's a situation, maybe it gets done earlier than that. But I kind of think that's a long time in recruiting. 3 months is a long, long time to wait, especially when you already have a decision date, which means maybe in the back of your head, you have a decision working.
All right. Well, Penn State fans, it doesn't sound like you're going to have a QB commit on your list anytime soon. Well, not at least in the short term. But, Sean, who could be the next prospect to commit to Penn State?
Well, Penn State had his blue-white weekend this weekend, and obviously coming out of that the spring game, you always have multiple commits, and whether that happens on the day of or whether it rolls out slowly, it's tough to say. You mentioned Brewer committed. Yesterday got Keandre Barker, 2025 running back from Texas. Donovan Harbor, an offensive lineman from Wisconsin, really was kind of off the radar coming into it, 4-star guy on the industry rankings. He was a guy that, came in, visited Penn State for the first time. Now, all of a sudden, he's going to announce on Tuesday. So things seem good for Penn State there. I believe the RPM is pointing to the Nittany Lions at this point. So Harbor, you may not have to wait long if you're a Penn State fan for the next for the next commitment to fall in line.
All right. Already an exciting spring. More to come. Thanks, Sean, for checking in with the Inside Scoop. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Josh. Good to see you.
Thank you for watching. Make sure you smash that subscribe button for me. And remember to check out all the videos on the On3 YouTube page.